matchup coming up in week number 3. Let's move on to Edmonton and Montreal. This was an interesting one because you took Montreal and I on CFL.ca took Edmonton. And the reason that I took Edmonton was there's no way they're actually that bad, right? right? They can't possibly. There's no way. Trevor Harris, Jamie Elizondo, Greg Ellingson, Darrell Walker, Armonte Edwards, James Wilder Jr., Grimes. They got Mincy on defense. They got Jonathan Rose. They got Kwaku Boateng. They got Sean White. They got Hugh O'Neill. They got Noel Thorpe. On and on and on and on. Coaches, front office, players, offense, defense, special teams. Whatever happened in week 1, I'm like, that's just some weird week 1 stuff. There's no way. And I'm not saying it was the exact same, but it was a different version of the same mess. It was so bad. And the one play that jumps out to me that encapsulated everything was the play that Trevor Harris ends up fumbling the snap when they get down inside the score zone with an opportunity to put a touchdown up on the board. And the reason this play jumps out to me, Jamie Elizondo was a first-time head coach, and I have full confidence in him. I've believed in everything that he's done in his CFL career, and I'm not to the point where I'm saying, bad head coach doesn't deserve to be there. But you said that he had one of the worst CFL coaching debuts in the history of the
probably
league.
The worst.
And the reason, and we got a couple of funny tweets about that where people were tweeting back and being like, I don't know, in 78, I saw that. We're like, okay, we weren't alive then. So we're just going based off of what we know. And that was one of the, in terms of hype and belief and opponent, and then the results.
And quality of roster.
Yes.
I believe Edmonton has the best wide receiving core in the Canadian Football League. When you can have Darrell Walker, Greg Ellingson, and Armonte Edwards on the outside, holy bleep, that's a headache. Yeah, like
Tavon Smith looked great. Shai Ross looks really good. They've got so many different. And James Wilder Jr. is running the ball hard for them. Like he seems.
And you can't score a point. They don't even score a touchdown in week 1.
I feel so bad for Connor O'Neill here at CFP because he wanted them to be the Elks so bad. And he said, if you're the Elks, I will buy my entire wardrobe will be Elks team gear and I will become the biggest super fan. And he hasn't exactly put his money where his mouth is, but he has been an Elks supporter online and he is in pain right now because when we sent out the power rankings of the Elks dead last year on CFP, he said long trombone sliding sadly noise because that's the way that it feels right now if you're an Edmonton fan. And the reason that, I bring up all of this about the play that encapsulated everything in Jamie Elizondo, get back to this for a second, is just that I always thought that Elizondo was, and I still do, but so well organized and there's never a T that's not crossed or an I that's not dotted. And then you see this play where they get inside the score zone where they're struggling and they take forever in the huddle. Forever. They don't break the huddle until there's 9 seconds left. And I'm like, okay, that's fine if you're just quarterback sneaking, but if you're quarterback sneaking, was it the substitution that delayed you so long? I'm like, this is rudimentary stuff that you just have to understand how to do in the CFL game. That I know they do. They understand it, but it's the execution that just kills me on this. They take forever to get people in the huddle. Harris is looking around to the sideline, trying to figure out who's coming in, who's going out, what's going on. He gets to the line of scrimmage. There's 5 seconds on the play clock. He starts telling everybody to go. And then the snap comes up and he fumbles it and they fall on it. And I think the commentators were saying something like, it's not that hard of a play. You should just go in there and sneak. But I think I'm fairly certain from watching this, they were planning on giving a little handoff on a reverse going the other direction around the end to Darrell Walker. And the reason I say that is Trevor Harris was never in a stance to squat down and actually go for a quarterback sneak. So part of the reason why he ended up fumbling the snap was that he was trying to stand up tall because he was trying to get the snap and turn sideways, hand it off to Darrell and get around the edge. Well, that explains why it took so damn long in the huddle because they're trying to call this play that's different than just a quarterback sneak. So now they're trying to get the right people in. And right before the snap, if you go back and watch it, the receivers on the opposite side that were going to be the lead blockers for Darrell when he came around that direction, they weren't on the line of scrimmage. So they have 2 receivers running up to the line and trying to figure out whether they're on the line or off the line or not sure. There's another time in the game where Edmonton has receivers on the line of scrimmage and Trevor Harris waves for one of them to move into the backfield. And then he does. And it becomes a legal formation with no end procedure. And it's just what is happening? This is supposed to be just such a button-down offense that knows where they're going at all times. And the first play of the game was so typical Elizondo and Harris. It was just spacing, right? Like if you play Madden or NCAA football, you know the play called spacing. Everybody basically goes to a soft spot, sits down, turns around at 5 yards, and the quarterback puts it on you. And it's like, I've seen Trevor Harris run that a billion times. And he does it the first play of the game. I'm like, good. Okay. They're getting him into a rhythm. They're figuring it out. And then it was just like execution mistake, lining up incorrectly, missing a throw here, lack of protection. And they are, I feel very confident saying this after watching game through too closely. They're not like they're bad. Like Edmonton is bad. And I thought that they were going to be the best team in the CFL right up there with, I didn't necessarily have Winnipeg there. I had Hamilton there, but I mean, Hamilton and Edmonton, I had going to the Grey Cup this year. And I'm looking at them both now and I'm like, they are fundamentally flawed teams that are being jumped over en masse right now in the standings.
Yeah. So over the last little while in the Canadian Football League, what have we seen? We've always seen a West crossover team to the East Division. This might be the first year where that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. For Edmonton, now they're in a fight. And they're in a fight with the team that they share a province with, right? Because BC looks a lot better than I think a lot of people thought, right? And obviously it's contingent on the health of Michael Riley, but a lot of CFL teams can say that. And we were doing our power rankings and Calgary was 7, Ottawa was 8, Edmonton was 9. I put Edmonton as the worst team in the Canadian Football League through 2 weeks. It was very hard for me not to do the same with Calgary. I almost had those two Alberta teams as 8-9 in the CFL just because, hey, Ottawa's 1-0 and they're the second worst team in the CFL. Like that doesn't make a lot of sense, but they beat supposedly the worst team in the CFL. Like for Jamie Elizondo, you have to fix this and you have to fix this fast because in the West Division, only with 14 games, if you fall 3 games out, through 3 weeks, then you have a massive problem on your hand where you're supposed to be the offensive guru. And through 2 weeks, your offense has looked bad, beyond bad.
So I'm just looking at it right now to try and see chronologically, because this is something that's really been weirding me out about Greg Ellingson to start this season is he feels non-existent. Like we've talked about the connection of Elizondo and Harris and Ellingson, and Darrell Walker is doing his thing, getting lots of touches, being pretty effective. But the first touch for Greg Ellingson in the first game against Ottawa, Kyle, that came with 14:03 left in the second quarter. The entire first quarter, he didn't get a touch, like he didn't get a target.
Yeah.
So that goes, and then his next target didn't come until the fourth quarter, at which point he had 4 targets in the fourth quarter. So he had 1 touch, 1 target in the second, nothing in the third, nothing in the first, and this is against Ottawa. Like this is against a team that you should be just running up and down the field on with Ellingson and Walker. And yeah, Benavides threw some doubles and did some different creative stuff to try and take Ellingson away because he knows how good he is. But you can't not give him more than 5 targets and you can't ignore him for 2 quarters completely. So that was week 1. And then Ellingson in this past Saturday's game, his first touch comes with 8-11 in the first quarter. That's not awful. He gets 1 touch in the second quarter at the 14-minute mark. None in the third, 3 more targets in the fourth. Like you can't go full quarters without targeting Greg Ellingson. I don't understand what's happening there. Maybe teams have just decided, kind of like the Bill Belichick thing in the Super Bowl against the Rams way back early in the 2000s, where he just said, I'm just not going to let Marshall Faulk beat me. I'm going to take away this one player. And let's see if Darrell Walker and Armani Edwards can beat us because we're not going to let Ellingson. Maybe that's what teams are doing. I don't know enough about defensive football and rotating coverages to understand what teams are doing right now with Montreal and Ottawa to him.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make any sense that Greg Ellingson is being ignored for complete quarters at a time in Edmonton right now.
Yeah. As for, the failures of Edmonton, especially offensively through the first 2 weeks, they draw along the same line as I think the Hamilton Tiger Cats, where the quarterback looks a little off with throws, timing, and I'm talking about just the quarterback and Jeremiah Masoli and Trevor Harris. They look just a little off, but collectively as a group, they look way off.
Yeah.
And it's not helping the quarterback, tighten things up in terms of getting into a rhythm. There was a play in week 1 where he threw a corner route to Mike Jones, and I thought the throw was serviceable. I thought Mike Jones could have made a better play, but Mike Jones just loses where he is on the sideline and doesn't even come close to getting a foot in bounds catching the ball. And I'm like, okay, something's wrong here, like just rhythm wise. And I'm with you. Like the lack of production, like one reception for 1 yard, like for one of the, I would say top, six at least wide receivers in the Canadian Football League. Like that's kind of bad. Armani Edwards, supposedly, a free agent signing that was supposed to be the finishing touch to this grand new offense that you have. And he has 8 yards receiving. Like, what is Jamie Elizondo doing to get the stars of their offense more engaged in the game? And I don't know. To be honest, and I always rail against this where teams don't stick to the run long enough. James Wilder Jr., 15 carries. Like you're running the ball a lot when your passing game isn't really getting into a rhythm. And it's not like your running game is turning into points, because it's not.
Wilder needs to I hate being this guy because this sounds like just like old white person radio. But James Wilder Jr. needs to stop doing the flex and hold the ball out in front on every down.
Time.
Because and I don't have a problem with him doing it. Like if you just want to like take a couple of steps forward and, because people always like jog forward and are like first down. If he wants to do that and just like flex and drop the ball, that's fine. It's the fact that he holds it for like 7 seconds and waits and waits and
the
waits.
The play clock's going.
Yeah, and like it's awkward and like we're ready to move on to the next play. And he's just like, did you guys get it? Did you get the picture? Did you get the picture? You got it? Okay, all right. And then he goes back to what he was doing, playing professional football. But it's funny though, because since Saturday night when I watched that game, I've just been imagining James Wilder Jr. wandering around the house doing the flex and point after like putting out the garbage, right? Like just celebrating the little things, wandering around the house. Like he realizes that the toilet paper roll has been put on backwards and he flips it and he just stands in his own bathroom doing the pose. He properly feeds the dogs 3 times a day. And at the end of the day, when he realizes he did it correctly, he flexes and points. I'm like, he must celebrate the smallest things in life and just be like, it's honestly like in Coach Carter when Samuel L. Jackson does the tying of the shoelace move, right? Like when he's just being a complete idiot and he's like, look at that bow. Woo! I tied that bow. Look at that. Yeah, can I get something for the bow? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
When he does that to Timo Cruz, I'm like, every time I see Wilder Jr. do that, I'm just like, are you crazy? I'm like, it was 2nd and 2. You should get the first down. Like you don't need to do this. But anyway, he's a funny character.
It's like the backup quarterback when they come in and they get a first down on QB sneak on third down, and they like run up like 4 steps and they give like the super first down point, and it's like, dude, you had to go 6 inches. The defense has to line up a yard back. Yeah, you should get the first down, and if you don't, you shouldn't be running QB sneaks. It's annoying. But by the way, I hate that we do this. Where
told you this is going to be old white person radio. I was afraid of it.
No. It's not about that. We did it with the Calgary game, and now we're doing it with the Edmonton game, where we focus more on the team that lost because
I know.
Montreal looked phenomenal.
They're great. They're so explosive.
Credit to Kahari Jones. There was Instagram videos of him going out, during warmups before the game, and he was dancing to the music. And it was great. And I'm like, that's Kahari Jones. That was a veteran in the CFL for a very long time, a very good quarterback, and probably a Hall of Fame, player. And now he is a head coach for a Montreal team that just followed up a grand 2019 turnaround. Nobody saw the turnaround coming in 2019 because we saw it. We saw it in Hamilton at training camp with Johnny Football there. Vern Adams Jr. was also in that quarterback group. Vern Adams Jr., he was asking to like run kicks back to try to get a roster spot. We never thought he was going to ever become anything as a quarterback. We were all wrong. And he's playing well. And it's kind of along the same lines as Zach Collaros. He doesn't have to put up crazy production. He just has to make enough plays with his feet because he has the ability to do so. And through the air, enough plays to win a football game. Yeah. And that's what he's doing in Montreal. And if that defense can play as well as they did, this week, then I think Montreal is going to be pushing, I want to say the Ticats for the East Division, but at this point, I have no bleeping idea.
I'm with you on that. I do love Montreal. I felt bad. I felt dumb for not picking them and not respecting them
They were 3-point underdogs. I didn't expect them maybe to win either. I wanted them to cover the spread.
I just hadn't
but they went out and they punched Edmonton in the face.
My whole thing with that is just that I hadn't seen them. I didn't, and that defense really scares me on paper. Up front, yes, they've got Woody Barron, and I think they've got some good playmakers in their defensive secondary. I just didn't know. I didn't know. And they actually moved bodies up front on Edmonton better than I thought they would with the offensive line too.
And William Stanback is still an absolute
he's a
beast.
But like Sean Jameson has moved into center. Christian Matt's at the right guard spot. Tony Washington's over at the left tackle. I mean, it's not on paper the greatest line, but they moved Edmonton up front in a way that I did not expect. And then VA has got to pick his spots. But the funny thing is, on the last play of the game before the kneel downs, Vernon Adams Jr. breaks into the open field and makes the nastiest little juke move and runs for 13 yards for a first down on 2nd and 10, and then they can just kneel out the clock. And when I saw that, I'm like, he didn't even have to use that tool. Like, in his skill set, never once in that game did he have to break out the I'm the most athletic quarterback in the CFL move. He was just playing quarterback. And I also love, and this might get a little old as the season goes on for people, but TSN getting the shot of VA before every drive started, taking that big inhale and then exhaling and relaxing and then stepping into the huddle. That might look cheesy to some people. He needs that. And you and I know this from being around him in Hamilton, Kyle. He was so unfocused. He was a jitterbug. We were in the cafeteria at McMaster during training camp where he was coming in PJs and had his headphones on and was sitting by himself and was watching cartoons on his iPad instead of watching film. And it was just I'm like, who is this guy? I'm like, no wonder he's bounced around. And I know he's supremely talented, but he just doesn't seem to have figured out what he has to do to get ready. When I see him actually maturing and being a leader and holding himself accountable and calming down his heart rate when he steps onto the field, I thought he was going to regress this season. After watching game one, I take that back. I don't think he's going to regress. I think he's going to continue to grow. And I think Montreal is going to be very, very good this year because of that.
Yeah, he's definitely taken steps in his progression as a passer. We always knew the athletic ability was there. But because Danny Machocha and Kahari Jones collectively have kind of shored up the offensive line, if Vernon Adams Jr. and William Stanback in the backfield, they can run some sort of read option package. Good luck trying to defend him with the speed that Vernon Adams Jr. has. And now he can throw in, those dump off passes because he's progressed as a passer. I think Montreal's offense can do some damage this year, especially with maybe some, shaky defense in. I'll be honest, I don't think the defense is as good in Ottawa as they think through week one, just because I think they ran into an offense that was absolutely horrible in that first week. But Hamilton too, I think there's cracks in Hamilton's defense. Injuries have played a part in that. But I think Montreal can do some damage in the East Division this year. And through the first 2 weeks, yes, Montreal has only played one game, but they look to be the cream of the crop in the division.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's move on to Vernon Adams Jr.'s old home, one of them, not Saskatchewan, not BC, no. Hamilton, that we are talking about. Is he's only about 5 teams away from the Kevin Glenn mark of being on every roster in the CFL. Hopefully he doesn't
never played for the Elks.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Or the previous name that's somewhat questionable.
I feel weird when we hear it on the broadcast now once in a while because they officially, people that are just drafted or just played for Edmonton in 2021 have only ever been Elks. But what do you call people that used to be part of Edmonton on the broadcast? Because factually correct, they were Edmonton Eskimos. That was the team name when they were there. But you can hear everybody on the broadcast just kind of slowly as they get close to it. They're like, yes, that's, you know what, you're going to hear this on Labor Day. I guarantee there'll be a moment, whoever's calling those games on Labor Day, where Calvin McCarty goes into the game for Calgary against Edmonton. There's Calvin McCarty, of course, the longtime former Edmonton football team member.
Yeah.
That's been the move on the broadcast is Edmonton football team member. And I'm like, man, that is starched.
Well, Dustin Nielsen, he pulled that this week. I think he got to a spot where he's like, oh, crap, I don't want to say that team name. He was talking about Jason Moss. Yeah. He's like, Jason Moss, offensive coordinator of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. He was the head coach in Edmonton with the – oh, crap.
Yeah,
then you put yourself in a corner.
Yeah, with the Anyways, so
come on, Dwayne, pull me out of this.
Yeah, you're just trying to move along. But Dustin was great, by the way, again this week, man.
Yeah,
his
really
calls,
good.
his calls in this Hamilton Saskatchewan game that we're going to break down right now, I thought were awesome, including the interception that went off of Banks' hands and was picked up by, I think, Blaise Brown, if not mistaken.